Guys, I feel like I've hit you with a lot over the past few weeks. Everything from prep guides to how to get free red border weapons. And I know, you're probably like, Cross, I don't need another checklist of things I need to get. So before we go any further, I want to say this right here, right now. You do not have to have any of these items going into the final shape. But at the same time, when the witness is bending you over, both in the launch of the final shape and in the final shape raid, maybe, just maybe, one of these suggestions could have saved us. Today, guys, we're going to be talking about the 15 exotics that we recommend going into the final shape. Now, let me just say, most veteran players, you probably already have all of these. We have a lot of new players and returning players who all came back for the Into the Light update. And it was crazy how many people were asking what my heavy weapon I was using in our very first Onslaught video, which, by the way, was Leviathan's Breath. Here in today's video, we're going to go through our recommendations with timestamps below. We're going to start with exotics that I'm going to be using for things like boss DPS. Then we're going to migrate to utility exotics, and then onward to primary exotics that are extremely potent. And these are exotics that are always potent regardless of the artifact mods. So without further ado, let's begin. First up, we have Leviathan's Breath. I know I just mentioned it a second ago, but it's one of my most used weapons pretty much everywhere, from Grandmaster Nightfalls to raids. This Void Heavy Bow is frankly amazing. Its exotic perk is Big Game Hunter, which reads, fires a massive heavy bolt that stuns unshielded combatants, strong against unstoppable champions. Now, its exotic intrinsic is Leviathan's Sigh, where when fully drawn, the bolt creates a large concussive blast that knocks combatants back and makes them volatile. You can see this weapon at use, guys. It is heavy and it feels heavy, but it does a chunky amount of damage. However, I'm going to preface this by saying that Leviathan's Breath is actually not that good unless you have the exotic catalyst. And the catalyst does two things. Number one, it completely maxes out reserve ammo. I've seen people still try to put on void reserves and they're scratching their head wondering why it's not working with Leviathan's Breath. And that's because the catalyst already maxes that thing out, which is great for those of us that hate to swap armor pieces every time we go to rally. But the second thing it grants you is Archer's Tempo. Now, it's not just any Archer's Tempo, it's Archer's Tempo fine-tuned for Leviathan's Breath. Archer's Tempo is a common trait on other bows where draw time decreases after every precision hit. But I remember way back when Bungie actually talked about Archer's Tempo on Leviathan specifically. And now the perk here goes beyond its benefits that are present on other bows. And you feel it, guys. When you land that precision hit with Leviathan's Breath, the next arrow knocks very fast. And suddenly, you're blowing your load into a variety of bosses within Destiny very, very fast. Literally, third encounter of Crota's in, I'm using Leviathan's Breath every single time. And I've been using it since day one. Between its huge ammo count and the massive damage profile, you'll be cutting through everything like butter. Now, how do you acquire it? This is the beautiful part. You simply need to purchase it from the Monument to Lost Lights. This is a kiosk in the tower, guys. And simply by having an exotic cipher, 100,000 glimmer, and an ascendant shard, you can make this purchase. Now, as for the catalyst, this drops from bosses killed by the exotic. And I don't know of any other way around this. Let me know in the comments below if it's dropped for you by simply having Leviathan's Breath on you, but not necessarily using it to get the final blow. Regardless though, guys, you need to get this exotic. It's too good. And then you need to get the catalyst. As far as exotic ciphers go, the easiest way to get exotic ciphers is either A, from the season pass, or B, you could just go to Xur. There's a quest right there, guys. It's very straightforward. You could do one each week and you can get an exotic cipher. Be careful spending too many of these though, as exotic ciphers are going to be important in the final shape when Master Raoul gets his upgrade. You can check out that video here. Regardless though, guys, this is a great weapon. Definitely get your hands on it. Now on to our second weapon. You know how I mentioned that there are weapons in the game currently free? One of those weapons is Dragon's Breath. Yes, it's the seasonal exotic for Season of the Wish, but since Bungie has made every season from this past year free, you right now, whether you're a free-to-play player or just a player who has not played literally all year, you can pick this exotic up. Now, if you're an OG player from Destiny 1, you're probably scratching your head wondering, Cross, why in the hell would I ever use Dragon's Breath? It was absolute garbage back in D1, unless you were farming Amaga loot rolls. Guys, let me just say, Dragon's Breath has been my most used weapon this past season in that heavy slot. And there's so many things that Dragon's Breath can do. Not only does it do a tremendous amount of damage to bosses by simply placing a shot on them, activating that exotic intrinsic, which allows your rocket to embed themselves in struck targets, but then it goes a step further. Periodically, it ejects incendiary fuel that inflicts Scorch. Yes, this directly ties into Solar 3.0. Now, the longer this weapon goes without firing, the more fuel the next rocket contains. Then its exotic perk, High Octane, reads that igniting nearby targets partially replenishes fuel. This weapon refills itself from reserves upon gaining maximum fuel. The main thing is, guys, if you see a big baddie in front of you, put a single rocket on it and let Dragon's Breath work. We're talking consistent damage over time, Scorch damage. You apply things like Ember of Ashes, even more Scorch stacks, and then ignitions, multiple ignitions I might add. And anything that's close to that ignition, it's constantly spreading out Scorch to nearby targets, literally clearing everything. But then we take it a step further. The catalyst makes it so that the weapon replenishes its fuel faster. And defeating targets with this weapon causes them to periodically drop fire sprites. Now, the fire sprite thing is really nice for things like ability regeneration. Maybe you're trying to dip into some of the fragments to give you back some of your health. Look no further than Mercy. But what this really means is that ×5 that you see there of that propellant, that is your Dragon's Breath at maximum damage. Think of it as like Anarchy. Anarchy is another weapon in the heavy slots. You don't really do a lot of damage with it actively. It's really just meant for you to place 2 shots on an enemy and it does damage over time. And then you swap to a special weapon and continue doing damage alongside it. Dragon's Breath is exactly that, except it's solar and even more potent. And with the ability to auto reload, you could cycle back and forth to your other weapons and pull off some incredible damage loops. Now, to take it a step further, Bungie even increased its ammo reserve, as if it wasn't already powerful enough. Now we're holding even more ammo, which means not only can you use Dragon's Breath for taking out high health targets, you can literally just use it for clearing a room or locking down an area. It does that damage over time, and it clears literally everything that steps within its radius. Now, during Bungie's reveal of this exotic, back when Final Shape was first announced, they spoke in that trailer about the new Warlock Super that will enhance solar weapons. Now, we've already seen gameplay of the new Super. It's essentially Sunsinger, but that enhancement to solar weapons. Yes, we have a number of solar weapons, but not many are positioned as well as Dragon's Breath to take full advantage of this. Now, to get this, you simply just need to grab it from your current season pass. It's level 1, guys, and it is completely free. Now, as far as the catalyst goes, this comes from Bungie. My only suggestion, though, when it comes to this exotic catalyst, is to make sure you reach rank 22 in your season pass. This right here quadruples objective progression earned within the season pass exotic weapon catalyst quests. Now, for the first step of the exotic catalyst, that's not that big of a deal. Simply just has you killing a couple bosses and defeating targets that have been scorched. It's the second quest step that's a big grind. Essentially, you have to get calibration data, which is going to require you to play either a lot of Crucible, a lot of Gambit, or a lot of Strikes. Don't kill yourself on this, guys. Pick it up literally as you're playing things throughout the season, especially when we get to double loot Nightfalls later on. That will contribute to this calibration data, which is quite a grind. But again, don't do this grind until you have that rank 22 unlocked on your season pass. That is going to save you a ton of time. Regardless though, guys, and I know this may seem annoying to obtaining this exotic, Dragon's Breath is worth it, and I highly suggest getting your hands on it before the final shape. The third exotic I would recommend is not really a DPS weapon, but by God, is it literally the best support weapon for your other rockets, most notably your legendary rocket launchers, and that's Gjallarhorn. Its intrinsic reads that rounds fired split into tracking cluster missiles upon detonation. And this is what you're seeing here, and it's what gives Galley those iconic Seekers. Then it has Pack Hunter, where it gains increased handling and reload speed when standing nearby allies. And firing this weapon also grants Wolfpack rounds to nearby allies wielding non-exotic rocket launchers. Now, Gjallarhorn by itself at one time was the rocket, especially back in D1. Now though, it's a support rocket. Essentially, it just amps up the damage of all of your other rocket launchers that are being used by your teammates. And I highly advise taking full advantage of one person using Gjallarhorn. It's like Divinity. You just gotta have it. On top of that, you got the exotic catalyst, which increases its mag size to 2 and causes Wolfpack round kills to spawn more Wolfpack rounds. Now listen, I'm all about edge transit right now. I know grenade launchers are really solid, but rocket launchers are extremely manageable. And if we find ourselves in an encounter, whether it's in the legendary campaign or in the final shape raid, and we have rockets, just having access to Gjallarhorn would be huge for your team. Now, how do we we get it? The only way to get Gjallarhorn is you need to own the Bungie 30th anniversary pack, and you need to complete the quest line within Grass of Avarice. Now let me just say, if you already have a teammate that's going into the day one raid and they already have Gjallarhorn, dude, just let them be the galley guy. You know what I mean? It's kind of like being the person that has to rock div the whole raid. They always got a job, but you don't want that job. You know what I'm saying? Now, exotic number 4. This is actually my most used weapon inside of Gambit. And yes, I do play Gambit, and that's Izanagi's Burden. This is a special kinetic sniper rifle with the intrinsic honed edge that reads, consume the magazine and load a round with additional range and damage. It also has a perk no distractions, which of course procs when you aim down sights for a bit of time, and literally just allows you to counter all flinch. And its catalyst that reads, increase the damage bonus of honed edge when 4 bullets are consumed. Now guys, Izzy has been wrecking bosses since day one. Hell, I use it right here in Gambit for just invades just to get the one-shot body shot kill. And that's because consuming 4 special ammo will give you honed edge times 4. And think of it as like a super shot. It does a hell of a lot of precision damage. It's a perfect weapon to pair with legendary rockets or even grenade launchers. You essentially just get a honed edge shot off, proc honed edge times 4 yet again, swap to one of your other weapons to mag dump, and then swap back and repeat the process all over. Definitely an exotic you should be getting. Now, how do we get Izanagi's Burden in 2024? Well, you'd need to own the Forsaken Pack DLC. Once you have that, you can then buy it from the exotic kiosk, where you can use one of your 3 Forsaken ciphers to instantly unlock it. Then afterwards, you can get the exotic catalyst, which has a chance from dropping by getting a kill with Izanagi's Burden. Now on to our 5th exotic we are recommending, and that is Outbreak Perfected, which by the way is being updated and dropping this week from the new 0 hour mission. Now listen, I don't necessarily jump up and use Outbreak really ever, but there are moments where you get DPS checked. Most notably, Caretaker Day 1. Everyone was running out of ammo. None of us had ammo when we got to that top floor, which made us rely on weapons like Outbreak Perfected. And that's because its intrinsic allows it to create Siva nanite swarms on both rapid hits and precision kills. And then its trait Parasitism states that this weapon does more damage to enemies based on the number of Siva nanites that attaches to them. And its exotic catalyst, get this, increases nanite damage. And enemies that die with the nanites attached to them generate additional nanites. Now, as a primary weapon with infinite ammo, Outbreak deals incredible damage if your entire team is rocking Outbreak. That's really what makes it strong. When everyone is rocking Outbreak and you're all creating nanites, you're all able to benefit from that increased nanite damage and Parasitism. Now, this is not me saying, hey, go into every boss encounter and just bring Outbreak. Please God, don't do that. I do believe that the perks coming up here soon are going to be really good on it. We'll be able to get things like rewind rounds on it, which should proc from the nanites, and I'm looking forward to it. Outbreak is really that last ditch effort. You've expended everything. You've literally dumped your super and all of your ammo. You've got nothing else. What do? Boom. Everybody, pull out that craftable Outbreak Perfected and let's go to Pound Town. Fellas, this weapon is going to be dropping this week from the new 0 hour mission. We'll have a guide on it, as well as how to get all the intrinsics and the catalysts. So be looking out for that guide. Now on to exotic number 6. Right now I'm going to be focusing more on our utility focused exotics, one of which is both a utility weapon but also just a phenomenal weapon, guys, and that's Witherhoard. Now Witherhoard can definitely be looped into boss damage. Many people utilize it in their boss damage rotations. It's kind of like things like Dragon's Breath. It just sits there and does damage over time, which tacks on quite a bit of extra damage. Its intrinsic reads that projectiles fired by this weapon blight the target or nearby area on impact, and its perk says that blighted targets take damage over time and blight the nearby area on death. With its catalyst giving you auto-loading holster, this allows Witherhoard to act very much like Dragon's Breath, essentially a way to deal damage over time to high out targets and have it auto-reload, allowing you to cycle to other weapons and ammo dump elsewhere. But it's not just the ability to tack on extra damage to high health targets, it's also the ability to just lock adds down and spawn areas. You find yourself in a situation where you need to control an area, Witherhoard has got you. Not only that, it's a kinetic weapon, which as we know, kinetic weapons contribute to both bars of transcendence, which is tied to our prismatic subclass. There's going to be a lot of weapons, of course, that will feed into this, but Witherhoard, I have a feeling with its ability to clear out tons of ads with that AoE damage over time, and with it being a kinetic weapon, this is going to be a great way to top off your transcendence. Now, in order to get this exotic, you just purchase it right there from our exotic kiosk for 1 exotic cipher, 100,000 glimmer, and 1 ascended shard. And the catalyst you can pick up right there from Bungie. And essentially all all the catalyst requires is you getting kills with grenade launchers and completing ritual activities. Now this acts the same as Dragon's Breath, meaning that same Season 22 unlock that gives you quadruple progress, you definitely want to pick that up for the ritual playlist portion. But with the Horde, a fantastic option. Now our next exotic on the list, and arguably this is a top 3 exotic in the game, completely for utility, and that's Diro Tractor Cannon. Its intrinsic reads that this weapon emits a powerful impulse that pushes enemies away and suppresses their abilities. It makes them more vulnerable to all incoming damage. Now its other perk states that damaging an opponent temporarily increases speed and handling, with its catalyst giving you more ammo reserves. The main focus with Tractor Cannon is number 1, the suppression, and number 2, the debuff. Now let me just say something about the suppression. Considering we're going to be going against an entirely new alien race in the final shape, you've seen gameplay of the subjugators casting out stasis and strand. Now the boss versions we're probably not going to be able to suppress, but just the regular yellow bars running around, yeah, you should be able to go in there and I'm assuming suppress their abilities, or at least I would hope so. But let's be real, most of us are using Tractor Cannon for the ability to debuff targets on demand. We're talking a 30% debuff whenever you want, simply by shooting them with this Void Shotgun. That's tied with things like Shadow Shots for the highest debuff in the game. I use Tractor Cannon literally for everything, even for myself when I'm debuffing targets for my Banner of War 1-2 punch combo when running Titan. And before you jump up and say, Cross, there are certain bosses you can't utilize Tractor Cannon with, look, I get it, but have you tried hard enough? Look at this rotation of Tractor Cannon here on Oryx. You can apply it even to bosses like Oryx out in the middle of space. And Oryx is one of those raid bosses that debuffs have a hard time proccing on to begin with. But as you see here, Tractor Cannon works. And considering how high that debuff is, I would advise you guys taking full advantage of it. Now, how do you get it? It's super easy, guys. You can grab it from Maeve's chest in the Cosmodrome, which is actually unlocked with this item from Shohan. And post getting this exotic, the catalyst will drop for you as a random drop just from killing enemies. I'm pretty sure you don't even need to have this exotic equipped in order to get the catalyst to drop, but even the base version of Tractor is still really good. Now, the next exotic we're gonna bring up, and I know this is gonna be a very divisive one. This is truly a utility exotic, and that's Arbalest. And before you downvote this video, understand that there are certain encounters that Arbalest pops the hell off on. Most notably, the Ghost of the Deep Dungeon. That final encounter, you can either sit there and lay into that barrier over and over, breaking that immunity shield, which takes up sweet, precious damage time, or you can literally shoot it just once with Arbalest. You see, its intrinsic reads that fires slugs that cause massive damage to command shields, strong against barrier champions. It also has Disruption Break, which debuffs enemies to kinetic damage when their shield is broken, and a catalyst, which gives it Genesis, where the magazine is refilled when this weapon is used to break a shield. The main thing with Arbalest, guys, is that it's a shield popper. Whether it's over shields, champion barriers, elemental shields, Arbalest has got you handled. If we have any encounters like this in the final shape, whether it's throughout the campaign or strikes, future dungeons, or even the raid, there's literally no better weapon than Arby when it comes to popping those shields. I even have it on the ready just for quick swaps and Ghost of the Deep. Now, how do you get Arbalest? You simply need to just grab this quest from Shohan if you own Lightfall. The quest will ask you to get kills with your super and then complete the New Line experience, as well as completing public events on the Imuna and get kills with fusions or linear fusion rifles. It's a really easy quest, guys, and a good exotic to have just in case. Now, if you don't want to go through this process, you can still get the exotic as a roll drop, with this exotic catalyst dropping randomly from ritual activities, like lots of the other exotics on this list. Now, the next exotic on the list is one of our newest exotics. That's Buried Bloodline. This is a Void Special Sidearm. You heard that right. This is a sidearm that takes special ammo. Now, its exotic intrinsic reads that it double fires tracking bolts, and landing bolts leeches health from the targets, with the secondary perk reading multiple final blows with this weapon grant Devour to the wielder. Now, the catalyst is truly the cherry on top, as while Devour is active, the weapon weakens on hits. Essentially, guys, this is the penultimate Void 3.0 weapon, and what it allows you to do is essentially give you Devour no matter what class you're rocking, and apply Weaken no matter what it is you're using. There's a reason why in things like Onslaught, Buried Bloodline is one of the most used weapons, and it's the combination of that insane survivability with Devour and the ability to increase lethality as a whole for your teammates, simply by applying debuffs with anything that you hit. And don't kid yourself, guys, Buried Bloodline on its own does a tremendous amount of damage. It's not like it's purely just a utility exotic. I actually feel like it shreds. It's got a ton of reserve ammo. You can pretty much use it as a primary weapon despite it being a special. And for me, it falls within that same category as like Indebted Kindness, but even better. And I love Indebted Kindness. Now, in order to get this exotic, you'll need to get it as a random drop from the Warlord's Ruin dungeon, with the catalyst coming from a secret puzzle within that dungeon. And this is a lot of information here to include in today's video, which is why we're going to give a link down below if you're looking to get this exotic and its exotic catalyst, as we have an entire guide on this. Let me just say though, this exotic is very much worth it. And for my folks that are doing this dungeon over and over and you're not having any success, remember the triumphs will actually increase your drop chances when you've completed them. For instance, if you solo Warlord's Ruin, this increases your drop chances for Buried Bloodline. And there's a ton of other triumphs that also contribute to this, including the Flawless Solo Run. And I don't know about you guys, as soon as I did my solo Flawless Run, like literally right after that, Buried Bloodline drops. But overall, guys, this is definitely an exotic worth getting. Moving on to our next exotic. I know I'm gonna get memed on for this one, but I'm really putting it here because to be quite honest with you guys, it does do pretty good damage and it has good ease of use. And that's Thunderlord. Everyone memes on this weapon in the community, but I don't think anyone can just come out and say it's bad. Its intrinsic states that final blows of this weapon generate stunning lightning strikes from above, strong against overload champions, and its second perk reads, this weapon fires faster and more accurately the longer the trigger is held, with continuous damage generating stunning lightning strikes. And its catalyst reads that causing a lightning strike with this weapon partially reloads the magazine from reserves. Now that's the big thing, guys. Listen, I love Xenophage. I even love Grand Overture. Grand Overture is definitely the best when it comes to burst DPS when you can get that times 20. Xenophage is really good if you have something that can actively reload your weapon, that being Actium War Rig. But Thunderlord is really good when you just want to say, hey guys, let's not think hard about this. Put it on, hold down the trigger, let it auto reload the weapon with its exotic catalyst, and let's just get the job done. Listen, I don't necessarily jump up and down about Thunderlord, but I can't deny its ease of use. And not only does it have a ton of ease of use, it's completely free. If you're interested in getting this exotic, it has never been easier to get than it is now. Just simply load up into the Hall of Champions, go to the very back there where Shaxx is, and grab it here from the Gift of the Thunder Gods. It's literally right there, fully maxed out at 1810 power. Now for the catalyst, this drops randomly from completing ritual activities. Nothing here that really contributes to this, guys. I don't even know if you have to have Thunderlord on you in order to get it to drop. It just simply drops from those activities, which includes the Gambit, Strikes, and the Crucible. Now moving on to our next exotic. This is our last utility exotic I'm gonna mention here, and this exotic gave me so much help when it first came out, and that's Agger's Scepter. Now, I know it's probably mind-blowing I'm even bringing this one up, but if you're ever in a situation where you need to freeze a room, I don't see any other exotic that can do it better than this Stasis Trace Rifle. Its intrinsic reads that final blows of this weapon generates a slowing burst around the defeated targets. And its secondary perk reads, Stasis Final Blows transfers ammo to this weapon's magazine from reserves. Now its catalyst has an alternate fire mode that essentially will drain super energy and overflow the magazine, and subsequently empowers the beam with bonus damage and the ability to slow and freeze targets until the magazine or super energy runs out, or if the weapon is stowed. Now this can only be activated when the super energy is full. The main takeaway here is that if you're solely looking for an exotic for crowd control, Agger's is probably the best weapon in the game. It freezes literally everything. That alternate fire mode boosts the damage and the crowd control capabilities to max. And if you pair this with a good stasis build, which we've done in the past in previous build battles, it locks down entire encounters. And this just gives you breathing room. You may be in a situation where it's like the third encounter of Val the Disciple, where you're just trying to stay alive. And there are situations where you just can't kill ads fast enough, especially during a day one raid. But having something like Agger's Scepter, which can slow, freeze, and lock down targets, is huge. Now to get this exotic, you will need to purchase it from the kiosk for 1 exotic cipher, 100,000 glimmer, and 1 ascended shard. And its catalyst simply drops from playlist activities. You bastards have no idea how lucky you are. At one time, that was literally the rarest thing in the game for me. Now we move on to our exotics that I feel are just the best when it comes to just shredding out ads after ads. And these are exotic primaries. Now, intrinsically, these have a 40% damage buff against red bar enemies in comparison to the legendary counterparts. But I would say each one of these exotics does more than just a little extra damage. It's the ability to clear out entire rooms, sometimes with a single kill. But I'm gonna start with one of my most used exotics this past year, and that's this strand sidearm called Final Warning. I've literally been using this every week in Pantheon. Its intrinsic reads, holding down the trigger marks targets within range and loads multiple bullets, which fire in a burst with increased stability on trigger release. And hitting a marked target with a fully charged burst will unravel them. Now, its second exotic perk says that hip-firing projectiles will track marked targets, dealing increased body shot damage on impact, and in aiming, those projectiles have greatly increased velocity and deal extra critical hit damage to those marked targets. Now, this exotic does not have a catalyst, which is crazy considering how much damage it puts out. It doesn't need one, but I would love one. Now, I would say this season, we're really not relying on Final Warning for its utility, and that's the ability to unravel, which of course synergizes with Strand 3.0, which can do a lot of things for you. A lot of people this season are just rocking the artifact mods, which are very, very good for Strand. But the moment we lose unraveling orbs, we may find unravel to become a bit more rare, and that's where Final Warning comes in. It keeps that unravel spam alive. But on top of this, when you utilize that aiming portion of this exotic, Final Warning deals massive amounts of damage, especially for a primary weapon. The unravel tick damage paired with the very high projectile damage is exactly why I use Final Warning every single week in Pantheon, and that's for red bars, orange bars, and even yellow bars. Now, to get this exotic, you must own Lightfall, and you'll get a quest from the Puka Pod after you've beaten the campaign and unlocked every strand aspect and fragment for one class. I know, it's not the easiest. You will definitely have to farm out for strand meditations in order to get this quest. Bungie just recently reduced the price of these, so it won't be as big of a grind. But completing this quest, though, will have you traveling to the Typhon Imperator. You'll then have to take out some Cabal, as well as a Tormentor, and then return to the Puka Pond and complete the Headlong Time Trial. Now, if you want a more in-depth walkthrough, we of course have a guide linked down below. This is a great exotic, guys. I know it's a grind to get this one, but well worth the trouble. Now, the next exotic on our list is definitely the most popular right now, and that's Sunshot. This exotic has the intrinsic Sunburn that reads, the weapon fires explosive rounds and highlights targets that take damage from Sunshot. Then its trait reads Sunblast, where targets defeated with Sunshot explode in solar energy, scorching other nearby targets. Now, its catalyst gives it a huge stat bump, which we very much appreciate in both PvE and PvP. Something that makes Sunshot very special is that it's the only 150 round per minute hand cannon in the game, but this is the Kabloomy generator. Any kill from Sunshot spawns an explosion, and its chaining capability can continue, meaning if you get a kill and that chains and gets another kill, that can then chain and get another kill. Now, you can imagine this season, Sunshot is extremely potent with the artifact mods that all tie into Solar, but I promise you, Sunshot is still going to be very powerful in the future seasons. Now, in order to get Sunshot, you can grab it from the Solar New Light kit right here at Akora, or you can get it as a random roll drop, including Zer's Ingrams, the catalyst coming from playlist activity completions. And for my New Light players, yes, another guide plug here. We did a guide for all New Light players that are looking to choose which kit. Highly advise checking that one out if you're just starting the game, as choosing the right kit will save you a lot of time. Now, the next exotic on the list, when you mention Sunshot and its ability to clear ads, well, hell, you gotta mention the other one, and that's Graviton Lance. This is a pulse rifle that deals void damage with an intrinsic that reads, the second shot of a burst rips a hole through space-time, doing high damage and recoil with no fall off. Now, its exotic trait states that kills with this weapon cause enemy targets to detonate and spawn void projectiles that tracks targets. Now, its catalyst gives it both Vorpal weapon and turnabouts. That's crazy. You deal more damage to elites and bosses, and you get an overshield when breaking enemy shields. This is essentially a purple Sunshot, except I would argue in some cases the chaining is even crazier, as it has a little more reach. Essentially, guys, you get a kill, and those void seekers, they get another kill, and those spawn more seekers that can then get another kill, and the chain just keeps going until the room is clear. And what's so crazy is that we're using Graviton Lance right now with literally no artifact mods boosting it. Sunshot is getting boosted right now, but this is base Graviton Lance. Imagine if we get void artifact mods. Now, how to get this exotic? You simply pick it up from the Void New Light kit, or you can get it as a random drop. The catalyst, of course, dropping randomly from ritual playlists. Now, this takes us to our other ad clearing weapon. This is kind of a pseudo ad clear, but also a very good defensive pick, and that's Risk Runner. This weapon reads that when taking arc damage, this weapon becomes more powerful and resists incoming arc damage. Kills extend the time in this overcharged state. Now, its second perk reads when Arc Conductor is active, passive. Shots fired have the chance to become chain lightning and return ammo. Now the catalyst bumps up the range substantially, which is noticeable in both PvE and PvP. Now the reason why Wrist Runner is such a unique pick is that you don't really get the benefits unless you're taking arc damage. But if you're going up against enemy types that are doing any type of arc damage, you have an incredibly potent weapon that will be chaining lightning just as good as Zala Supercell. And I know my D1 players right now are like, Cross, how could you? Now you can also self-activate this by hitting yourself with your own arc grenade. I wouldn't necessarily say go out of your way to do that. Mainly just use Wrist Runner when you're going up against enemies that are doing arc damage. What really makes this weapon so good though, and what we personally love about it, is that arc resists. Whether it's day 1 raids or legendary campaigns, when you're dealing with enemies that are dealing arc damage, Wrist Runner will save your life. Literally from clearing day 1 Atrax at minus 20 power, or the collection encounter of Vow the Disciple, Wrist Runner was saving lives through both of those. And as we get closer and closer to that minus 20 power within Pantheon, I'm sure at some point I'm gonna break out Wrist Runner. Now in order to get this exotic and its catalyst, either pick up the Arc New Light kits or complete the Spark of Hope quests from the New Light experience, which is what we recommend. This quest has you checking out some low sectors and then completing the risk reward mission in the EDZ, where you head back to the Cosmodrome and get this exotic from one of Cade's stashes, with its catalyst dropping from ritual playlists. Again, that was the one that we recommended not choosing, as you simply have this quest that will give you Wrist Runner. So a very easy way to snag this one. Now for our final and last exotic on our list, this is one that I know many of my warlocks love, but it's also an exotic that every class can utilize, and that's Striga. Now I know it's been nerfed, but it's still really solid. Its intrinsic reads that it fires a stream of sentient toxic projectiles that track the targeted enemy. Its secondary perk states that landing a final blow or multiple precision hits triggers a burst that poisons nearby targets, with the catalyst that allows for your poison final blows to return ammo to the magazine. Now Osteo acts very uniquely with the poison damage that it spreads. This poison deals quite a bit of damage, and it also ticks for a while. And the way you really utilize Osteo is just lay into the bigger guy in a group, and that poison burst will afflict all those nearby enemies, which will start to rack up the kills like mad. Now this beautifully synergizes with Necrotic Grips. And by the way, we're getting Necrotic Grips as part of our exotic class item, which is going to be crazy to pair with so many different things. And those poison final blows don't just return ammo to the magazine, it overflows it. That paired with Necrotic Grips, guys, means infinite chaining poison. And with the spirit of Necrotic paired with one of these other exotics, it's only going to get nastier. Now to get this exotic, you simply need to complete the Witch Queen campaign. Don't you love how I say simply? The great thing is that it's completely free right now. And to get the catalyst, you just need to level it up to 10, where it automatically unlocks as a crafting option. And yes, guys, right here at the Enclave, you can craft Striga. So guys, that is it. That's essentially 16 exotics that I think are going to be very good in the final shape. You don't have to get every single one of these, but from now until then, if you've got some downtime, I would urge you to pick up some of these. And the beautiful thing about pretty much all of these is that they can be obtained through some deterministic means. So you're not at the mercy of RNG. And with Bungie making things free, accessibility has also never been better. So make sure to take full advantage of it, as these DLCs are only free until June the 3rd. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.